Hello, and thank you so much for listening in for the U.S. Breastfeeding Committee's Appropriations 101 video. I'm Cheryl Lebedovich, and I serve as Senior Policy and Communications Manager at the U.S. Breastfeeding Committee. We support a network of breastfeeding coalitions and member organizations and bring them together to do this important work, supporting human milk feeding as a public health imperative. And that includes federal funding for breastfeeding. For the next few minutes, we'll walk through an overview of the federal appropriations process so that you can see how funding decisions impact human milk feeding and understand the steps that are taken to create and approve the federal budget. So let's dive in. Each year, funding is allocated to a variety of federally funded programs that include lactation support through the federal appropriations process. Appropriations help build and strengthen critical programs and initiatives to improve maternity care practices, increase access to peer and professional support, ensure continuity of infant feeding care, increase support for lactating employees, address disparities in breastfeeding rates, and beyond. With this graphic from the National Priorities Project, you can see how the federal budget comes to be. Each federal budget is developed for what's called a fiscal year, which begins on October 1st and runs through September 30th of the following year. Developing a federal budget begins with federal agencies submitting budget requests, and then the president submitting a budget plan, which reflects the vision, values, and priorities of the administration and sets the stage for the federal budget negotiation process. Congress then develops its budget plan, called the budget resolution, to set a total amount for spending in the year ahead, which is sent to the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, where it is divided among 12 subcommittees, each charged with developing an appropriations bill. Once these bills pass both chambers, they must be conferenced to work out any differences between the two versions before being sent to the president to be signed. So as you can see, there are a lot of steps that lead to our federal budget. The lactation field is primarily included in the Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriations Bill, and that includes the CDC Hospitals Promoting Breastfeeding Program, a major policy priority for USBC. This funding provides the infrastructure support for a huge portion of the lactation support efforts in the field, including for many organizations in the USBC membership. It supports efforts for public health nutritionists, maternity care quality improvement initiatives, workplace support efforts, CDC surveillance efforts, and so much more. This funding also helps CDC embed lactation education and support into other maternal and child health efforts, including on the state and local level, in community health centers, and beyond. The funding has also been a major driver for building and strengthening critical programs and initiatives that address longstanding disparities in human milk feeding access and outcomes. But lactation is also woven into a variety of additional federal programs, including the WIC Breastfeeding Peer Counselor Program, the Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health, or REACH program, the Maternal and Child Health Block Grant, the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting, or MICV program, and beyond. Our babies are worth investing in, and funds are critically needed to overcome the many setbacks in maternity care practices and access to lactation support during the pandemic, as well as to help turn the tide on the rapidly rising rates of chronic disease. I hope that you'll join us in calling on policymakers to maintain and expand this funding. This is an investment that will come back many times over by reducing health issues across the lifespan, reducing the environmental impact of commercial milk formula, and simply letting parents choose and achieve their infant feeding goals. If this resonates with you, I urge you to take just a few minutes right now to raise your voice. Our policy change efforts will be successful only if there are constituents who are willing to speak out. Ways for you and your organization to get involved will likely depend on where we are in the appropriations process at any given moment. But because the appropriations process is so long, slow, and valued, there are pretty much always some kind of action that you can be taking. The first is also the simplest. Using the USBC's individual action tool to contact your members of Congress to tell them that you want them to support this funding. With just a few clicks, our tool will connect you to your senators and representative with messages reflecting the latest updates and asks. Organizations have a really important role in this advocacy effort. And one of the ways to get your organization involved is by joining our annual appropriations letter. This joint letter is updated and released each year and shared at strategic moments in the appropriations process. So we are always working to grow our list of organizations and businesses that support this critical funding. And of course, sharing testimony and experiences about how this funding makes a difference for your community, your organization, or your network can go a long way. So please just take one moment to visit www.usbreastfeeding.org/advocacy to find easy action tools for contacting your members of Congress. And if you're ready to do even more to advance lactation funding or any of our other policy priorities, you can again visit usbreastfeeding.org/advocacy to find easy action tools for contacting your members of Congress about a variety of issues. You can take a moment to share your perspective and your story about all aspects of infant feeding. You can keep an eye out for public comment opportunities in the Weekly Wire newsletter and share your perspective with policymakers. You can help elevate these conversations by publishing blogs, pitching stories to news outlets, or writing and submitting an op-ed. You can meet with your members of Congress by requesting a meeting. You can help create change, sometimes as simple as just amplifying action opportunities on social media. And of course, donating to the USBC is critical to fund our efforts to advance this important work. The messages and stories you share are an important part of advocacy and demonstrate the real impact that these policies would have and that constituents want and need this change. You don't have to be a lawyer or a legal expert to make a difference. So with that, I'll close by thanking you for your attention and dedication to human milk feeding policy. Together, we can create a landscape of support for lactating families. Thank you.